In 1919, a 31-year-old World War I veteran stepped off a train in Cisco, Texas, with $5,000 pinned to his coat lining and a dream of becoming a banker. Within 48 hours, that dream was dead. The bank owner he'd traveled to meet had just raised the price by $5,000 at the last minute, killing the deal. But across from that train station stood a cramped 40-room hotel, with 3 people crammed into every bed, renting space in 8-hour shifts to oil workers. That rejected banker bought it on impulse for $40,000. His name was Conrad Hilton, and that rejection became the accidental foundation of what's now worth over $63 billion. By the time Conrad died in 1979, his backup plan had grown into 188 hotels spanning 6 continents. Today, you'll learn how a failed bank purchase, the Great Depression that nearly destroyed him, and the most stubborn persistence in business history turned one man's biggest disappointment into the Hilton Hotel empire and changed how the entire world travels. Before we dive into this story, if you enjoy learning about the economic events and financial decisions that shaped our world while most people weren't paying attention, please hit that like button and subscribe to The Sleeping Economist. Ring that notification bell so you never miss these stories. Chapter 1. The Accidental Hotelier. Conrad Nicholson Hilton was born in 1887 in San Antonio, New Mexico Territory, before New Mexico was even a state. His father, Augustus, ran a general store, and young Conrad grew up watching customers, learning the art of negotiation, understanding what people needed before they asked. This wasn't a wealthy family. This was frontier America, where you worked or you didn't eat. By age 25, Conrad had already tasted politics, serving 2 terms in the New Mexico Territorial Legislature. But politics didn't pay the bills. What Conrad really wanted was to become a banker, solid, respectable, profitable. Banking represented security, status, the American dream of the early 20th century. Then came World War I. Conrad served overseas and, like many veterans, returned home in 1919 looking to rebuild his life. An old friend told him about opportunities in Texas, where oil had just been discovered. Towns were exploding overnight. Money was flowing like crude oil from the ground. Banks were needed everywhere. Conrad scraped together $5,000, about $85,000 in today's money, and pinned it inside his coat lining for safekeeping. He boarded a train to Cisco, Texas, a town that had grown from 1,500 people to over 10,000 in just months thanks to the oil boom. He had his eye on a small bank he could purchase for $75,000. He figured with his $5,000 down payment and loans from family and friends, he could swing it. But when Conrad arrived at the train station, a telegram was waiting. The bank owner had gotten greedy. Price up to $80,000 and skip the haggling. Conrad didn't have an extra $5,000. More importantly, he hated being manipulated. The deal was off. Standing in that train station, Conrad could have returned home defeated. Instead, he walked across the street to the Mobley Hotel to get a room for the night. What he found there changed everything. The lobby was chaos. Men sleeping on chairs, on the floor, waiting for rooms. The hotel only had 40 rooms, but it was renting them out in 8-hour shifts, 3 times per day. Oil workers would sleep for 8 hours, then the next shift would take the same bed. The rooms stayed full 24 hours a day. Conrad watched the owner, Mr. Mobley, turning away customers because there simply wasn't space. Conrad did quick math in his head. If each of those 40 rooms turned over 3 times daily and the hotel stayed fully booked, the profit potential dwarfed any small-town bank. Within 3 days, Conrad Hilton, the rejected banker, had purchased the Mobley Hotel for $40,000. He borrowed money from his mother, Mary, scraped together funds from friends, and signed the papers. On May 31st, 1919, Conrad Hilton became a hotelier entirely by accident. Chapter 2. Building the Empire. Conrad threw himself into the hotel business with the intensity of a man making up for lost time. The Mobley Hotel taught him everything. He learned that hotels during an oil boom weren't just about beds, they were about maximizing every square foot. He converted unused spaces into rentable rooms. He installed a washing machine in the basement and charged guests for laundry. He noticed guests needed places to eat, so he turned part of the lobby into a restaurant. The hotel wasn't just lodging, it became a complete service ecosystem. Within months, the Mobley was generating profits that would have made that rejected bank look like pocket change. Success breeds ambition. Conrad realized oil boom towns across Texas needed the same thing Cisco did: more hotel rooms. Between 1919 and 1925, he systematically identified growing Texas towns and either bought existing hotels or built new ones. Each property taught him new lessons about efficiency, service, and profit margins. In 1925, Conrad took his biggest leap yet. He built the Dallas Hilton, the first hotel to actually carry his name. It was 8 stories, 200 rooms, and it introduced something revolutionary: Hilton's standardized approach to luxury. Every Hilton property would maintain certain quality standards. Guests would know what to expect. This was brand building before branding was even a common business concept. The expansion accelerated. By 1929, Conrad owned or operated 7 hotels across Texas. He opened the El Paso Hilton, the Abilene Hilton, the Plainview Hilton, the Lubbock Hilton. Each one was carefully chosen for location and growth potential. Conrad had developed an eye for real estate that bordered on supernatural. He could walk into a town and within hours know whether it would support a profitable hotel. His business strategy was innovative for the era. Instead of just buying existing hotels, Conrad formed partnerships with local investors who understood their markets. He'd provide the Hilton brand, management expertise, and operational systems. They'd provide local knowledge and part of the capital. It was an early form of franchising. By 1930, Conrad Hilton was living the American success story. He'd started with a rejected bank deal and $5,000 in savings. 11 years later, he controlled a hotel empire worth millions. He was wealthy, respected, and expanding rapidly. The young man who accidentally became a hotelier was now one of the most successful businessmen in Texas. But Conrad's meteoric rise was about to slam into the hardest economic crash in American history. And unlike the oil boom that created his empire, the coming storm would threaten to destroy every hotel, every dream, every dollar he'd built. The Great Depression was about to teach Conrad Hilton a brutal lesson about resilience. Chapter 3. The Breaking Point. October 1929. The stock market crashed, and the American economy collapsed like a house of cards. Within months, the oil boom that had fueled Texas's growth sputtered and died. Companies closed, workers left, and suddenly Conrad's hotels sat increasingly empty. In the hotel business, empty rooms are financial death. You still pay mortgages, maintenance, staff salaries, utilities, but revenue vanishes. Conrad watched his occupancy rates plummet from 90% to 50%, then 30%, then lower. Hotels that had printed money just months earlier were now bleeding him dry. By 1931, Conrad couldn't make his mortgage payments. The banks and insurance companies that had eagerly loaned him money during the boom now demanded payment. One by one, his hotels went into foreclosure. The Dallas Hilton, his pride and joy, the first to carry his name, was taken by creditors. Then the Lubbock Hilton, then the Plainview Hilton. Conrad later said the Depression nearly forced him into bankruptcy 3 separate times. His creditors weren't heartless. They were desperate themselves. The American National Insurance Company of Galveston, his primary lender, seized control of most of his hotels. But here's where Conrad's character revealed itself. Instead of walking away, he negotiated to stay on as manager of the properties he'd lost. Think about that psychology. Conrad Hilton was managing hotels he no longer owned, working to make them profitable for the companies that had foreclosed on him. Most people would have given up. Most people would have found that arrangement humiliating. But Conrad saw it differently. He was keeping his expertise sharp, maintaining relationships, and proving he could make these properties work even in impossible conditions. By 1933, Conrad retained control of exactly one hotel, the El Paso Hilton. Everything else was gone. The empire he'd built over 14 years had collapsed to a single property. He was 46 years old, technically broke, and managing other people's hotels on salary. The physical toll was brutal. Conrad later wrote about months where he couldn't pay himself a salary, where he lived on credit and hope. He talked about walking past hotels that used to be his, feeling the weight of failure. The man who had accidentally become a hotelier now faced the very real possibility that his entire career had been a temporary accident of timing. But here's what Conrad's creditors noticed during those dark years. The hotels he managed still outperformed competitors. Even in the Depression, Conrad found ways to cut costs without cutting quality, to attract customers, to squeeze profit from impossible situations. They kept him managing their properties because he was simply better at it than anyone else. And Conrad was learning patience, learning survival, learning that empires aren't built just in boom times. Chapter 4. The Comeback. The Depression didn't end quickly. It ground on through the 1930s, a relentless economic winter. But Conrad refused to quit. He spent those years doing something crucial. He paid back every dollar he owed. Most people in his situation would have declared bankruptcy and started over. Conrad refused. He viewed his debts as personal obligations, not just business transactions. Between 1933 and 1942, while managing hotels for other people, Conrad systematically paid down the money he owed. He lived modestly, saved ruthlessly, and honored every creditor. This wasn't just moral principle, it was strategic brilliance. By refusing to declare bankruptcy, Conrad maintained his reputation and his relationships. The same bankers and insurance companies that had foreclosed on him watched as he faithfully repaid them. They remembered. In 1934, Conrad reached a settlement with the Moody's, his major creditors. They lent him $95,000 and returned control of the Lubbock, Dallas, and Plainview hotels. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a business decision. They recognized Conrad could make these properties more valuable than anyone else could. From 1936 onward, Conrad began acquiring properties again. But this time, he was more cautious, more strategic. He'd learned brutal lessons about leverage and risk. He structured deals differently, maintained larger cash reserves, and never again assumed prosperity would last forever. The expansion accelerated through the 1940s. Conrad learned that some of the best opportunities came during hard times. While others feared investment, he identified undervalued properties. In 1942, he finally expanded beyond Texas, purchasing the townhouse in Los Angeles, then the Plaza Hotel in San Francisco. Hilton was becoming a regional brand. Then came World War II. Most industries suffered, but hotels, particularly in major cities, saw increased demand from military personnel, defense workers, and government officials. Conrad's timing proved fortunate once again. The war years strengthened his financial position dramatically. By 1946, Conrad formed the Hilton Hotels Corporation, consolidating his properties under one organization. He took the company public, raising capital to fund even more ambitious expansion plans. The man who'd been broke 13 years earlier was now running a publicly traded hotel empire. In 1947, Hilton went international, assuming management of the Palacio Hilton in Chihuahua, Mexico, the company's first property outside the United States. Conrad's vision was expanding beyond America. He saw a world where business executives and tourists would travel globally, and they'd need consistent, quality hotels everywhere they went. The comeback was complete. By 1949, Conrad had rebuilt everything he'd lost and doubled it. The Depression had nearly destroyed him, but it had also forged him into a more disciplined, strategic, and resilient businessman. The foundation was laid for something truly unprecedented. Conrad was about to make 2 acquisitions that would transform Hilton from a regional hotel chain into a global empire. Chapter 5. Conquering the World. September 12, 1949. Conrad Hilton walked into the Waldorf Astoria in New York City as its new owner. This wasn't just another hotel purchase. This was a statement. The Waldorf Astoria was American royalty, the hotel where presidents stayed, where world leaders negotiated, where high society gathered. It was the greatest of them all, as Conrad called it. The purchase price was $3 million for controlling shares, but Conrad's eye for value was legendary. He'd been buying Waldorf Astoria bonds since 1942 for pennies on the dollar when everyone thought the hotel would fail. When others saw risk, Conrad saw opportunity. He accumulated bonds with a face value of $500,000 for just $2,500. By the time he took control, he'd positioned himself perfectly. The Waldorf acquisition put Hilton on the international map. Suddenly, Conrad wasn't just a successful regional hotelier, he was a major player in global hospitality. The publicity was priceless. Newspapers worldwide covered the story. The name Hilton became synonymous with luxury hotels. But Conrad wasn't finished. In 1954, he orchestrated the largest real estate transaction in history up to that point. He purchased the Statler Hotel Company for $111 million, about $1.2 billion in today's dollars. The Statler chain included 10,400 rooms across premier locations. Overnight, Hilton Hotels Corporation became the largest hotel chain in the world. The Statler acquisition demonstrated Conrad's evolution as a businessman. This wasn't an emotional purchase like the Mobley Hotel had been. This was calculated strategy. The Statler properties filled geographic gaps in Hilton's coverage. They brought economies of scale in purchasing and operations. They created a network effect where the Hilton brand became ubiquitous. Through the 1950s and 1960s, Conrad continued expanding internationally. Hilton Hotels opened in Berlin, Istanbul, Cairo, London, Rome. Conrad believed American-style hospitality and standardized service could succeed globally. He was proven right. Business executives traveling internationally specifically sought out Hilton properties because they knew what to expect. By 1960, Conrad was named chairman of the board of Hilton Hotels Corporation. He'd built something unprecedented, a globally recognized brand in an industry that had been mostly local and fragmented. When travelers thought hotel, they increasingly thought Hilton. The numbers tell the story. Conrad started with one 40-room hotel purchased accidentally for $40,000. By 1979, when he died at age 91, Hilton Hotels Corporation operated 188 hotels with 68,000 rooms across 6 continents. The company's value had grown into the billions. That rejected bank deal in Cisco, Texas, had become the foundation of a global empire. Today, Hilton Worldwide operates over 7,500 properties in more than 120 countries. The current market capitalization exceeds $63 billion. Conrad's accidental decision in that Cisco train station created something that outlasted him by generations. Chapter 6. The Lessons That Built an Empire. So what can we learn from Conrad Hilton's accidental empire? What principles turned a rejected bank deal into billions of dollars and changed how the world travels? First lesson: rejection redirects you toward better opportunities. When that bank owner raised his price, Conrad could have gone home defeated. Instead, he stayed curious. He walked across the street. He paid attention to what he saw. The Mobley Hotel wasn't his plan A, but it proved far superior to the bank he'd wanted. Second lesson: real wealth comes from solving urgent problems. The Mobley Hotel wasn't successful because it was fancy. It succeeded because it solved a critical problem. Oil workers desperately needed places to sleep. Conrad built his empire by identifying where demand exceeded supply, then meeting that need efficiently. Third lesson: failure is only permanent if you quit. Conrad lost almost everything during the Great Depression. Most entrepreneurs who lose their empires never rebuild them. Conrad did, because he refused to declare bankruptcy, maintained his relationships, and worked through the pain. From 1931 to 1942, he spent 11 years rebuilding. That's longer than most people work toward their dreams in the first place. Success isn't about never failing. It's about outlasting your failures. Fourth lesson: systems beat sporadic effort. Conrad didn't just buy hotels randomly. He developed standardized systems for operations, customer service, and financial management. Each hotel taught him lessons he applied to the next. By the 1950s, guests knew exactly what Hilton meant: consistent quality anywhere in the world. In your own work, are you building repeatable systems or just hustling without structure? Fifth lesson: patience compounds. Conrad was 31 when he bought the Mobley. He was 62 when he bought the Waldorf Astoria. He was 67 when he acquired Statler Hotels. His biggest deals came after age 60. We live in an era of 25-year-old billionaires, and it's easy to feel behind. But Conrad's story reminds us that building something lasting takes decades, not months. The question isn't whether you're succeeding fast enough. The question is whether you're still building. Sixth lesson: sometimes Plan B builds empires. Conrad wanted to be a banker. He became a hotelier by accident. His backup plan became his legacy. What are you dismissing as Plan B that might actually be your greatest opportunity? Conrad Hilton's story isn't just about hotels. It's about vision, resilience, and the compounding power of showing up even when circumstances destroy your plans. It's about a man who turned a failed bank deal into $63 billion worth of impact on how humans travel. The bank owner who raised that price in 1919? History doesn't even remember his name. If stories like this, where we uncover the economic events that shaped our world while most people weren't paying attention, fascinate you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because we're just getting started with these financial, educational mysteries.